Howdy friends, and welcome to a special festive episode of Seanson's never-ending PlayStation Deep Dive, where instead of talking about games that are noteworthy and fan favorites, we're instead going to talk about weird Japanese exclusives based on European children's properties. It's what every gamer wants for Christmas, I imagine, and hey, who am I to deprive you of such joy? Now truthfully, this isn't actually a topic I had planned on working on, well, at least, not this soon anyway. You see, early on in November, I started working on a planned Christmas video that would cover a collection of games. Some Christmassy, and some, not so Christmassy, but, you know, still related to the topic at hand. So progress in this video was going pretty smoothly. I had about 60% of it done at the beginning of December, but unfortunately at that point, the hard drive that I was using to store said work, and also all the work that I had ever put into this channel, decided to have a mild implosion, let's just put it that way. Now this mild implosion of course meant that I lost all my footage, and while I would be more than happy to record it again, some of those games took a little bit longer than I'd like to admit to get through, and one in particular I really don't feel like playing through again anytime soon. I don't even want to look at it. Well, anyway, that video will probably make it out someday in some shape or form, but with time dwindling down, I needed to start work on an emergency Christmas video. Now, the obvious choice would have been to play beloved classic Squaresoft game Parasite Eve, but for whatever reason, I just didn't think of that, so instead, here's Pingu on the PS1. I don't actually own the physical copy of the game, so just imagine this Pingu VHS is the game instead. Look, we've even got clips of the cats playing with it. You can't get mad at me, I'm giving you what you want. So of course, today's topic is Fun Pingu, a Japanese-exclusive PS1 game released in November 1999. And you know it's going to be good because the word fun is in there twice, and that's double the fun, guaranteed. So first, a little backstory. Pingu is a claymation children's show that originated in Switzerland and first aired in the early 90s. It was a regular part of my childhood, and there's a pretty good chance it was a part of yours too, thanks to it being a huge hit all across the globe, and no part thanks to its incredibly cute cast of penguin and Arctic characters, but also because the show used a made-up language known as Penguinese, which definitely isn't just gibberish Italian. This meant Pingu had massive universal appeal. You could air it anywhere in the globe with no worries about translations, subtitles, etc. It's just a mischievous penguin shouting newt newt a whole bunch. What's not to love? Also, David Hasselhoff did a Pingu song back in the early 90s, which I'm sure also did wonders for the brand.
My name is Pingu, come on dance to the beat. It's easy if you try, just watch my feet. Let's all be happy and have some fun. Let's count to 10 and start with 1. Now you might wonder why I decided to play this game today, an old children's game based on an even older beloved children's property. Well, there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, it's got a lot of snow in it. I know that doesn't make it a Christmassy game per se, but it is a winter game, and as such, is Christmas adjacent, which is good enough for me. Number two, it's Pingu, who, let's be fair, is hilarious. And finally, number three, and also the most important reason, as I may have mentioned in my videos previously, I've always been fascinated by the amount of PS1 games Japan got that were based on Western properties that also happened to be exclusive to Japan. Last year, we looked at the Snowman video game that was exclusive to the PS1 in Japan, and then we've also got games like Beavis and Butthead Virtual Stupidity, which is also somehow exclusive to Japan. Now, the easy answer as to why this was a thing is because in the 90s, Windows and IBM compatible computers were nowhere near as common in Japan compared to the West, so instead of getting a Japanese PC release, you'd often see these games just get PS1 ports instead that were exclusive to the region. Now interestingly, unlike the games we previously mentioned, Pingu here has the distinction of being a game built ground up for the console. You'd imagine Fun Pingu would be a port of a PC Activity Center style game similar to the Snowman or many of the Disney kids games that also made it to the console, or
even the majority of already existing Pingu games, which are also PC activity titles. But nope, this here is a true PlayStation exclusive. So why did Japan go to the effort of making this game for their market? Well, the short answer is that Pingu is big in Japan. Oddly enough, out of every region that Pingu aired in, no country took to it quite like Japan. It became very popular, especially with young and teenage girls, and I mean, when you think about the kawaii culture of Japan and their love of very cute mascots, well, claymation penguins were bound to be a hit, weren't they? Now, this love of Pingu still exists in the country to this very day. It regularly airs on TV over there, and not only that, the most recent reboot of Pingu, known as Pingu in the City, was actually made in Japan and first aired there before actually being imported over to the West. So if anybody ever asks you who your favorite anime character is, well, Pingu is now a legitimate option. Well, that's enough backstory, I think, so let's talk about the game, why don't we? Now, Fun Pingu isn't just some throwaway release. This game was actually developed and published by Sony themselves. Well, Sony Music Entertainment Japan, but hey, it's still got Sony money behind it. This meant that Fun Pingu didn't just see a regular release, it had special editions that included toys, postcards, and even official Pingu PS1 controllers and memory cards, which are not only very cute, but also come in multiple colors too. You love to see it. It even has Pocket Station support, you know, in case you want your own Pocket Pingu, and I mean, who wouldn't? So yeah, clearly Pingu on the PS1 is a bigger deal than you might think, but of course this is still a game primarily aimed at children, and when you look at the main menu and see an option called Gameland, well, you might think in spite of the fact that it's made ground up for the console, it's still probably just another activity center or minigame collection, and yes, while it does have minigames, the core of Fun Pingu is actually an episodic adventure game where you wander around Antarctica helping people out, or breaking their stuff. Actually, you can break lots of stuff. And there's also a dedicated Newt Newt button, which I pressed nearly 24/7. Honestly, most of the time I played this game, I was a massive jerk, but you can also help people out too, if you like. Anyway, Fun Pingu is basically an adventure game aimed at very young children. The game is split into 5 parts, which essentially act as self-contained episodes, each with its own standalone plot, and even opening and closing sequences to boot. If you ever wanted to partake in an interactive episode of Pingu, well, this is about as close as you're ever gonna get. Now, as you'd imagine, since this is primarily aimed at young children, the game is very simple to pick up and play. It's more or less just a point-and-click adventure game, except instead of pointing and clicking, you actively move Pingu around the screen with your controller and press buttons to interact with things. It's actually very similar to the game The City of Lost Children, only Pingu is much less terrifying and also much less French. Now, Pingu himself does have tank controls, but since it's a later release and, you know, launch with an analog controller, you can of course use the analog sticks for movement, which feel pretty good. Outside of that, you can rotate Pingu with the L1 and R1 buttons and simply just press circle to interact with everything else. Now, in reality, that's about all you need to know to play this game successfully, but the most important part of the Pingu PlayStation experience is the R2 button that allows Pingu to say Newt Newt on command, and also the triangle button, which, if held down, allows Pingu to do a little Naruto run, further cementing himself as the best anime character. Now, this run, very useful for navigating around the game, but if you combine this run with the Newt Newt button, well then there's potential for hours of fun. Fun that is almost entirely derived from Pingu being incredibly annoying to everybody around him. Now, an episode of Pingu usually starts with a short cutscene of Pingu interacting with one of the various other characters, be it his parents, his little sister Pinga, aka the best penguin, or one of the many other side characters that exist in this little Arctic village, like Seal or Penguin with Hat. These conversations usually result in you needing to fetch an item of some sort to move the game along. Sometimes you need to explore the environment to seek out the item or find the right person to talk to, but in most cases, the character you need to go to will be highlighted on a little map that's accessible at any time, and you simply just need to follow that to progress. The map shows the whole of the Arctic that you can explore, and each of these little icons represents a different location. Now, it can seem a little overwhelming at first, but each of these locations branches off into its own separate little paths, and since each area is more or less just a straight line with a bunch of different things in the middle, navigation is actually incredibly simple. All you gotta do is interact with the signpost at either end to move on, and if you're ever lost, just cross-reference the image with the map, and well, you're good to go. Once you make it to the location and find the item or person you're looking for, you're usually treated to another little cutscene, and then you've got to waddle or Naruto run your way over to the next location. Obviously, when given the choice, the Naruto run / Newt Newt combination is the optimal way of travel. Outside of simply wandering back and forth to different locations, the game also gives you a bunch of additional things to collect if you're willing to go out of your way. The most important of these are these little snowflakes, which are often found, unsurprisingly, in the snow, but can also be found if you interact with items or even complete little mini quests within the episode. Now, the reward for getting these snowflakes is a pretty big one, let me tell you. At the end of each episode, Pingu and Pinga visit this secret underground toy base, and if you manage to collect enough snowflakes, you can bring a special toy to life, which then results in both penguins performing a whole dance routine with it. Riveting stuff, I know. You can probably imagine how heartbroken I was when I didn't collect enough snowflakes during episode 2. How dare they deprive me of penguin dance time? What am I expected to do? Watch Happy Feet? Come on. And I suppose the only other gameplay element of note are the mini-games, cause let's be fair, it's not a kid's game if it doesn't have mini-games. Some of these mini-games you will play naturally as part of the episode progression, but others actually need to be sought out and can only be unlocked by using hidden items in certain locations, actually adding a bit of replay value to the game if you're, you know, like me and missed out on nearly all of them during your playthrough, confirming once and for all that I am in fact actually quite terrible at video games. Although that being said, the mini-games I did play didn't exactly set my world on fire. They are about as simple as you would expect and range from fine to kinda broken. The first one is a little fishing game where you gotta press and release the circle button to try keep this meter in the center. Of course, I didn't realize that at first and was tapping the circle button repeatedly, which just ended up winning me a fish anyway, so there you go. By the way, the only Japanese that appears in this entire game is during the instructions for the mini-games, but as you can see, even if you don't figure them out immediately, you'll probably be fine regardless. The next game I played was a popcorn popping competition. By the way, everybody loves popcorn in the Pingu universe, and really, who can blame them? This game requires you to alternate tapping the circle and X buttons to shake your popcorn pan, but only when the meter is hovering around the middle, otherwise you'll burn or waste your popcorn if it's too cold. Another simple one, but probably my favorite of the bunch just because it's fun to watch penguins making popcorn, you know? The final game I played, and the only non-story game of the bunch, is this bath time minigame where you gotta make Pingu wander into these bubbles being launched at you by Pinga. The hit detection here is a little bit wonky, I gotta say, but if you manage to wander right up to the center of the bath, you end up automatically hitting the majority of bubbles without even trying, so there you go, that's a free strap for any budding Pingu speedrunners out there. Now, once you beat a minigame, you can also play them again from the main menu if you like, where it will also taunt you about any of the minigames that you missed, but like I said, even without playing all the minigames, I get the feeling they're really nothing more than a little distraction to break up the core adventure mode gameplay. They're cute and technically competent, but they are minigames in a kid's game, and well, unsurprisingly, they're nothing really to write home about. Honestly, the main reason I think people would even be playing this game as a whole, both back when it first came out and even nowadays, is if you like Pingu. And thankfully the best parts in this game are the cutscenes and story segments featuring Pingu and the rest of the characters. Now, if you ever watch Pingu the animation, it's almost at times like a fever dream, a mess of random noises and odd claymation that I often can't take my eyes off, either when I was a child or even nowadays as an adult. And the game really does manage to capture that feel here on the PlayStation, essentially allowing you to play out interactive versions of these episodes, complete with all the strange visuals and penguinese intact. There were genuinely moments in this game where I burst out laughing during a cutscene because of how incredibly bizarre the whole thing is. And most of the time it came down to the voice acting, which really never ceases to get a smile out of me. Absolute madness. The little stories here are also quite nice as well. I believe a ton of them are based on existing episodes from the show, but they mostly follow Pingu around going on simple errands, being a jerk to people, being really nice to people, or more importantly, trying to win the heart of a girl penguin from a love rival, which involves model plane races or sabotaging sleds. You know, penguin stuff. There's also a nice ongoing story that runs from the very beginning of the game until the very end that sees you helping a stranded penguin who's been kind to you throughout the whole adventure, allowing you to truly complete Pingu's anime protag arc from little jerk ninja to wise old Hokage. Honestly, the only problem I have with some of these segments are that they can run a little bit long and often repeat a lot of the same penguinese sound bites, but they're without a doubt the highlight of the game and really do capture the spirit of Pingu perfectly. They're also helped in part by the lovely presentation of it all too. Now let's be fair, Pingu isn't the most visually exciting game out there, in no part thanks to its Arctic locale, which, you know, only allows for so many variations of igloos and various other icy structures, but to its credit, it does capture the look of the show, and more importantly, it allows for some big and expressive character models which look great both up close and from afar. And in spite of 95% of this game's cast being Emperor Penguins, you can still tell each of them apart due to their little design quirks, which most of the time involves giving them a fun hat to be fair, but hey, who doesn't love a penguin in a hat? It's a simple but charming looking game, and hey,
It even runs well too, giving us a full 60 PPS.
which in this case stands for 60 penguins per second, the optimal amount of penguins. As for the sound, well, things here aren't as rosy, I'm afraid. While the voices are pretty much perfect outside of the odd reused line, the music was unfortunately, not for me. It's that very sickly sweet style of nursery rhyme music that's completely inoffensive for the most part, but there is a very small selection of music across the various locales, and you will hear these small amount of songs a lot during this game, to the point where it actually kind of started grating on me a little. Eventually I ended up just turning the music down a bit to drown it out, but worst case scenario, you can just spam the newt newt button and that also works as a nice distraction. So yeah, Fun Pingu, in many ways a nice little kid-friendly introduction to console adventure games, and also a treat for fans of the lovable little Emperor Penguin. A game that captures the spirit and vibe of the animations that made him popular, and similar to those animations, this is also a game that's completely import friendly outside of the odd minigame instructions, of course. That being said though, is this a game that I'd recommend playing? Not really, and it comes down to a few things. As an adventure game, it's cute and competent, but it still never really amounts to anything other than a series of fetch quests with the odd minigame thrown in. Sure, the story segments are fun and entertaining, but the majority of the game is just wandering around, moving from one location to the next, stopping to pick up the odd snowflake here and there, and then moving to the next area again. It's something that's okay to put up with at first, but it ends up becoming quite a detriment to the game, as later parts require you to search for characters and items without any hints, resulting in you needing to check each and every location in the hopes that it's the right one. And not only does this take a very long time, but there's a decent sized load screen in between every location too. It's not uncommon to wander aimlessly for 10 odd minutes if you get unlucky, and unfortunately no amount of Newt Newt and Naruto running can really make them any less painful. There is a lot about this game that I like, but the mind-numbingly boring back and forths throughout the Arctic take up the overwhelming majority of the game's runtime, and well, that's something that won't just annoy adults, but kids too, I'd imagine. You see, kids are smart, right? I knew when a game was boring and wasting my time when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and believe me, there are plenty of kids games that are cute, accessible, and friendly, but also a lot of fun. See pretty much everything ever released by Humongous Entertainment for reference. Pingu here is really cute and accessible, but it's also very boring a good 75% of the time. 25% of the time, it's absolutely bonkers, off-the-wall penguin nonsense, but 75% of the time it is aimless wandering and load screens, and 25% of a game being good does not make a good game. So, in conclusion, Fun Pingu is a cute, harmless, but otherwise entirely skippable kids game based on a Swiss penguin that somehow got very popular in Japan. It's another odd and forgotten curio in the PlayStation's incredibly vast library, and I'm at least happy it exists, because not only did it let me newt to my heart's content, but it also brought us the Pingu line of official PlayStation controllers, which, let's be fair, are easily in the top 5 of all PS1 controllers. How could you not love them? Anyway, that's about it for today, but before we finish up, I'd like to give a big shout out to my lovely supporters over on patreon.com who continue to support me in my quest to critique children's games wherever possible, including fine folks like Lad, Alan Caslin, Crimson Cyclist, Dave Nolan, Doma, Fergal O'Hagan, Globe99, Justin Drown, Kyle Winter, Moomatron, Moomin Biscuit, Trans Rights Are Human Rights, Mr. the Joshmon, Richard Kramer, Shadowman13, and Spectre117, who all subscribed at the Fan++ tier. And finally, a big thank you to everybody for watching this video and supporting me throughout the year. You're all absolute sweethearts, and I hope I helped make your 2022 as fun as you made mine. I hope you all have a happy Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, holidays, New Year, and everything in between. I'll be back in 2023 for what will hopefully be a big year for the channel, but until then, I'll love you and leave you with some sound advice for the new year. Remember to always back up your hard drives, and when you're given the choice between playing a Pingu game and Parasite Eve for a Christmas special, well, let me tell you, you should play Parasite Eve. See ya!
My name is Pingu, come on dance to the beat. It's easy if you try, just watch my feet. Let's all be happy and have some fun. Let's count to 10 and start with 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, let's go to 11. Stomp your feet and turn around. Reach for the sky, now touch the ground.